God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And what a real privilege it is to be joining all of you guys this evening. And let's see here. Welcome to the Thursday Night Men's Emotional Sobriety Workshop. This is not a formal AA meeting, but a workshop put on by men, put on by now men and women interested in the continuation and maintenance of spiritual awakening to stay recovered from alcoholism. This is not a substitute for 12-step big book recovery. In fact, we think our exploration of this letter will only be relevant to someone who is actively working the program of recovery outlined masterfully in our AA Big Book. Everyone is encouraged to share what they are working on to mature and grow spiritually. Please enjoy the conversation and allow others to do so by maintaining an attitude of open-mindedness and tolerance. Our workshops this summer will be recorded in order to allow other members of our fellowship to enjoy these conversations, so please be mindful of that when sharing. Our meeting will begin with the reading of Bill Wilson's 1958 essay, The Next Frontier, Emotional Sobriety. After the reading, we will have a 30-minute to an hour lead share, and the meeting will then be open for participation or questions. And tonight, Corey C. is going to read the letter. I don't know if he better do a good job too, or I'm going to take it right back over.
I hope I do a good job. Hey, my name's Corey. I'm an alcoholic, and this is the emotional sobriety letter. I think that many oldsters who have put our AA abuse cure to severe but successful tests still find that they often lack emotional sobriety. Perhaps they will be the spearhead for the next major development in AA, the development of much more real maturity and balance, which is to say, humility in our relations with ourselves, with our fellows, and with God. Those adolescent urges that so many of us have for top approval, perfect security, and perfect romance, urges quite appropriate to age 17 prove to be an impossible way of life when we are age 47 and 57. Since AA began, I have taken immense wallops in all these areas because of my failure to grow up emotionally and spiritually. My God, how painful it is to keep demanding the impossible, and how very painful to discover finally that all along we have had the cart before the horse. Then comes the final agony of seeing how awfully wrong we have been, but still finding ourselves unable to get off the emotional merry-go-round. How to translate a right mental conviction into a right emotional result, and so into easy, happy, and good living. Well, that's not only the neurotics problem, it's the problem of life itself for all of us who have got to the point of real willingness to hew right principles in all our affairs. Even then, as we hew away, peace and joy may still elude us. That's the place so many of us AA oldsters have come to. And it's a hell of a spot, literally. How shall our unconscious, from which so many of our fears, compulsions, and phony aspirations still stream, be brought into line with what we actually believe, know, and want? How to convince our dumb, raging, and hidden Mr. Hyde becomes our main task. I've recently come to believe that this can be achieved. I believe so because I begin to see many benighted ones, folks like you and me, commencing to get results. Last autumn, depression, having no really rational cause at all, almost took me to the cleaners. I began to be scared that I was in for another long, chronic spell. Considering the grief I've had with depression, it wasn't a bright prospect. I kept asking myself, why can't the 12 steps work to release depression? By the hour, I stared at the St. Francis prayer. It's better to comfort than to be comforted. Here was the formula, all right, but why didn't it work? Suddenly, I realized what the matter was. My basic flaw had always been dependence, almost absolute dependence, on people or circumstances to supply me with prestige, security, and the like. Failing to get these things according to my perfectionist dreams and specifications, I had fought for them, and when defeat came, so did my depression. There wasn't a chance of making the outgoing love of St. Francis a workable and joyous way of life until these fatal and almost absolute dependencies were cut away. Because I had over the years undergone a little spiritual development, the absolute quality of these frightful dependencies had never been so starkly revealed. Reinforced by what grace I could secure in prayer, I found I had to exert every ounce of will and action to cut off these faulty emotional dependencies upon people, upon AA, indeed upon any act of circumstance whatsoever. Then only could I be free to love as Francis did. Emotional and instinctual satisfactions I saw were really the extra dividends of having love, offering love, and expressing love appropriate to each relation of life. Plainly, I could not avail myself to God's love until I was able to offer it back to Him by loving others as He would have me. I couldn't possibly do that so long as I was victimized by false dependencies. For my dependence meant demand, a demand for these possessions, or a demand for the possession and control of the people and conditions surrounding me. While those words, absolute dependence, may look like a gimmick, they were ones that helped to trigger my release into the present degree of stability and quietness of mind, qualities which I am now trying to consolidate by offering love to others regardless of the return to me. This seems to be the primary healing circuit, an outgoing love of God's creation and His people, by means of which we avail ourselves of His love for us. It is most clear that the real current can't flow until our paralyzing dependencies are broken and broken at depth. Only then can we possibly have a glimmer of what adult love really is. If we examine every disturbance we have, great or small, we will find at the root of it some unhealthy dependence and its consequent demand. Let us, with God's help, continually surrender these hobbling demands. Then we can be set free to live and love. We may be able to gain emotional sobriety. Of course, I haven't offered you a really new idea, only a gimmick that has started to unhook several of my own hexes at depth. Nowadays, my brain no longer races compulsively in either elation, grandiosity, or depression. I have been given a quiet place in bright sunshine.
Thank you so much, Corey. Appreciate your reading. You did a great job tonight. I have the privilege of introducing Bryan P. tonight. I don't want to take up too much of his time, but he's been an extremely active member of Alcoholics Anonymous for a long time. He is, a great example of what this program looks like in action. He's a great guy. So I don't want to take up any more of his time. I just want to say thank you, Bryan, for coming on tonight, and just have fun with it. Take as long as, or as little as you want. And we'll open it up to Bryan P.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate that. It's a little overstated, I think.
Yeah, well,
I appreciate it, but anyway, thanks for asking me. My name's Bryan. I'm an alcoholic, and my sobriety date's March 6th of 93. And Sam asked me last week, it's probably going to get ugly because I'm probably going to share some real authentic failures. So
you.
Just want to let you know.
We're going.
Somebody's talking, but I'm trying to keep up. Just a few house cleaning things. First off, I'm not wearing a coat and I'm not wearing a tie. Just want to let you know. Anyone want to snitch on me, call my sponsor, let them know. There's two reasons. Just let you know the reasons so we're all clear before you call them up. One is there's no coats allowed inside the house. That's just my rule. And I don't wear a tie because my cat's allergic to ties. And she'll start sneezing, and cat sneezes freak me out. So I'm just doing this. That's all you get tonight. My home group is the Smoking Gun Big Book Step Study. We meet in downtown, close to downtown Dallas, which sounds really ominous. Now that I think about it, was not my name. I'm one of the stove touchers. But I let the guy choose the name so we could have it near my house, and now I don't live in that house anymore, and so I want to change the name. I'm trying to figure that out. So I'm going to talk about my experience with this letter. You know, what I'm thinking is there's some people on here that have known me pretty much almost 27 years. And there's some people on this that may not even know currently the last 2 years what's been going on with me. And I've been sober 27 years. And I'm telling you right now, if you're new to AA, that's a miracle that I'm sober. And I truly grateful. And if what I share starts making you doubt, please don't. Just know that the fact that I'm sober and alive today is a miracle. I remember reading this letter when I was about 5 years sober, and I think this is true for lots of things. The lens I see things through are based on my current experiences. And I know when I read this letter, I heard it. I can't remember, but I remember when I read it or whatever at 5 years sober, I remember thinking, Bill should just do the steps. I had such arrogance around the 12 steps, and I was such an evangelicus around the big book that you know, I took it like, come on, like get your life together, Bill. It's funny, you know, because I've had about 23, 22 years of amazing years of sobriety, and I've probably had 4 years of really painful sobriety. And when I look at it, you know, when I read this letter, you know, reading it today, I can totally get behind it. I understand it, you know, and I still get trapped in this belief that I want to hide who I truly am and become who you think I should be. And it's a story that's weaved through my whole life. You know, I've done that my whole life, and I brought that into Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm just coming out of some really 2 years of darkness, and I'm going to share some of that experience, and I'm going to share what's happened the last 6 weeks, because what I know about myself. When he said, this is a really good line. I just want to read this because when I heard it, I'm like, yeah, that's me right there. Sorry to be rude, but he talks about Hyde, the Mr. Hyde. I can't even find it. How to translate right mental conviction into a right emotional result. I'm just telling you, man, my experience has been, the spiritual life I've treated it like a theory at times. I have treated it like it's over there, and I will pretend to be somebody I'm not. There's a piece of me that wants you to see me in a certain way, and I get trapped in that. And it's usually self-manifested. I'm not a victim of anything. You know, Bill used the word victim. I'm not a victim of that. It's who I am, and it comes down to some of my core defects, which is really it can be defined in 3 I have lots of defects, but the 3 that I'm talking about is I have a ability to try to self-manage my life. Like, I will muscle through. I won't tell you what's going on. I don't get vulnerable. I don't get honest. And I have lots of experiences I can blame that on. You know, I've been to therapy, and that all may be true, but the reality is, like, I'm 27 years sober. I'm 58 years old. So I don't get to use that as an excuse. I understand. You know, I was 4. My brother was 6 when he got cancer. And then he died a year later. My family checked out, and I pretty much raised myself. And then when I was 10, my older brother, I was the youngest of 4, molested me with some of his friends. And then I ran away with them at 12. I mean, what's up with that, right? And so I had this way of being of like, I won't show you how much pain I'm in. I'll just fix it. And it's traveled up until today. Well, not really today, but about June 15th is the day that it started to release. And let me tell you some experiences around that, because I can get trapped into my job. You know, I was a salesman for this marketing firm, and I had to be the #1 salesman, and I would go to battle just to be the best. I had to learn that I had to practice those principles in that job. And when I started to do that, I started to exceed, and I started to be much more successful. But I still would get trapped into this. You know, I remember I would go, if my name wasn't top on the board, I would start to feel less than. Like I was getting all my value, all who I am based on #1 salesman. And it's all a lie. It's not really what makes me anything. For about 8 years, I was the CEO of a treatment center down here in Texas. Like, I still have business cards with my name and the CEO on it. Like, I don't even know why. I don't even work there anymore. Like, there's this falsehood. And I'm also going to tell you this. I know I'm all over the place, but I just want to tell you. Me and a friend did the 5-minute meditation, and she did one of the best prayers. So whatever comes out is clearly not my fault. But what I'm finding out at 27 years sobriety is my life run on my will. I can hurt people to a level that is really undefinable. And, you know, I got trapped into speaking at AA. I remember I called this guy up. I was like 7, 8 years sober, which I think if you're 7 or 8 years sober and you're speaking at AA conferences, I think it's a setup, you know. I didn't have the ego strength to handle that. Best line I ever heard in Alcoholics Anonymous, which I related to, probably because I laughed and I thought, that's me. There's a guy one time in a meeting when I was newly sober, they were talking about ego, and they said, hey, Jason, do you know anything about ego? And he said, well, my ego would kill a lesser man. And I don't know why, but that was the funniest thing I ever heard. And I spit coffee out of my nose, and I thought, because that's how I am. I'm all like this guy who wants you to see me as humble, and yet I thrive off of feeding my ego. And I can get it fed lots of different ways. And I called this guy up. We all know he's not alive anymore, but I called him up. And this is self-seeking. This is not me actually wanting some advice. This is who I am, just so you get a clear picture of honest Bryan. I'm 8 years sober, and I'm speaking at places, because I got some crazy story, and I called this guy up and I said, hey, Don, I said, I'm just really concerned, I'm speaking all over, and I'm just concerned how it's, how it's going to affect my ego. And really what I wanted him to say was, you know what, you're so spiritually fit, you don't need to worry about that. And this is what he said. He said, yeah, you should be worried. And I'm like, that's not what I was looking for. And he goes, I'm always amazed at what my ego does with the gifts that God gave it. And I'm thinking, that's been my experience. And I'll tell you last 2 years experience, and then I'll just open it up because I don't really want to talk anymore. I just want to share some real truth about how I can hide behind and the damage it can cause. So I have some major stuff in my life, major trauma, stuff I never got honest with, stuff I hid behind. It all came out when I was 20 years sober, about being raped in prison. And I got honest about it, but I never did anything about it. And I never told anybody, and I really never told my wife what was really going on internally with me. I never shared like the night terrors. I never shared the feelings. I never, people were pushing me to get some help. I would talk to my sponsor about it. I would do what I always do, which is I'm okay. I got this. And it's a lie. It's a false self that I bring into the world because I can't look weak. And it started to bleed out. And it started to bleed out in behaviors that what I call are, well, Bill calls them the benighted, morally ignorant, unenlightened. And, when you're 24, 25 years sober and you start behaving in a way that is against your morals, against my principles. See, if I violate someone else's principles, it doesn't mean anything. But if I start violating my own principles, it's a real problem for me. And I have a tendency to hide, and I have a tendency to try to cover it up, and I try to fix it. And sometimes I fix it by doing more in AA. Sometimes I fix it by working 60 hours a week. Sometimes I fix it by any other way, but really getting honest and really getting down to the core and say, I'm really hurting and I really need help. And I'm behaving in ways that start putting me in a dark place. Nobody put me there. I put myself there. My unwillingness. See, the three things I've learned out of this last 2 years is I have an ability to self-manage my life because I think I can fix it because I can't trust anybody. I have a level of dishonesty to hide the truth that really scares me. And I don't have a trust in God that he's really going to protect me. That's at my core. I don't really trust God. At least that's how I felt up until about June 15th, which to me is kind of pathetic, and I know it's like authentic, but it's really pathetic. I'm 58 years old. I'm 27 years sober. And I could say up until June 15th was probably the really first time I actually believed that I could trust and rely upon a power. And it's not like I haven't made decisions. I haven't walked into that realm, but at my core internally. And I'll share how this has happened and what's been happening. It's because it's pretty miraculous. And so I went to this place for a week to get some help because I was thinking about suicide, and my wife really had caught me in a lie. But I was thinking about killing myself. It was getting dark. I couldn't undo the behavior. It was like alcohol to me. It was like, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to do that anymore. And I could not do it. And I couldn't get willing. I wasn't honest enough. And I didn't trust God that it would be okay. And so I did what happens, and I burned it to the ground. And I went to this place and I got some help. It was really trauma work, and I could talk for a long time about that, but it's not really relevant to what we're doing here. But when I came out of that, I remember calling my sponsor and telling him the behaviors. And I remember telling him I'm going to have to tell my wife. And I remember saying that if I tell my wife this, it'll probably ruin my marriage. Now, there's people on this call who know her. She's the sweetest woman ever. She wouldn't harm a fly. I've known her for 27 years. We got sober together. I didn't tell her that night, but the next day I got up and I did some prayers, and I did this prayer. And this is typical of me. Like, I make a deal with God, which to me is just like, what's wrong with me? And the deal I made with God was, I'm gonna trust you, and I'm gonna trust that whatever happens is supposed to happen. And if it ruins my marriage and breaks up my family, I'm not gonna blame you, and I'm not gonna stop trusting you. But I just ask that you walk with me, because I don't know if I can handle the pain. And not the pain of, like not being with somebody, the pain that I cause and I hurt people at a level that's so deep, people that are real close to me. And I did that, and it rolled out the way it rolled out. I harbored, like, I take full responsibility, and no one was to blame but me. I like to try to push it off on my trauma stuff, but it's a lie. The truth is, maybe the first time, but multiple times, it's me. It's all me. And I know that, and she knows that. And so we got divorced, and I moved out. And, I moved out September 1st, moved in an apartment, and I remember sitting here, and I realized something. I'm 50, I was 57 there. I was 57 years old, and I've never lived by myself, ever. And I just destroyed 27 years of a close friendship and love for a person that I would have died for. And I just split up kids who had never seen their parents argue, had never seen their parents yell, who were confused. And I did that. And I'm not saying, like, if the first time I did what I did, if I had come to her and said I just did this, that she wouldn't have left me anyway, but I can almost guarantee you that probably not. And I learned this lesson, and it started to unroll, and I started doing work, and I started doing work more deeper with my sponsor, and I started understanding these are where the truth. I don't really trust God. And June 8th was the final. It was the official. And June 15th, a friend calls me up, tells me he's dating her. And, it's not like we've been separated for 10 months. I don't think it was a short time. I mean, it's none of my business. But the pain, and I would have said it was the pain of her dating someone I knew in AA, but really that had nothing to do with it. The pain that hit me, I wanted to make it about that. It was an easy out. And I had to make some amends that day because of my behavior, and I did. And I called lots of people. But the real pain was that I had to sit quietly in my apartment knowing that when I live my life in a benighted way, right, against my principles, self-will run riot, I am capable of destroying people, sober. And that never goes away. I don't get to not live with that. Like, I've made amends, but that doesn't just go away, and I'm really embarrassed to say this. This is not what I'm proud of. This is, if you're new to sobriety, trust me, the ending is very, very important. But around 2:00 that night, I was just going to check out. I'm 27 years sober. I got 2 kids. And I live on a 2nd floor and have a balcony, and it overlooks the parking lot. It's a Monday night. And I typed these sheets, and I'm going to go hang myself. Not like, I don't know if I would have went through with it, but I sure felt like I couldn't escape the pain. And I walked out on my balcony, and I really believed as I walked out, I started to have doubt. But when I walked out on my balcony, there was some guy at 2:00 in the morning, like 15 feet from my balcony, 2:00 in the morning on a Monday night, moving stuff into his apartment for 45 minutes. On a Monday night. Like, who does that? And I remember as I walked over and I looked at him, like, why is he going up and down the stairs? And I instantly knew that I made this. I asked God, and all day, and this is super like raw for me, all day, as I'm in this massive amount of pain, I'm willing to call Mike, I'm willing to call friends, I'm calling lots of people, but not once did I think about hitting my knees. And I sat on that porch and I realized, like, I asked God to walk with me. And I don't know if he put that guy there, you know, I mean, I don't know, but I know this, that I knew at that moment that was not an escape, and that my surrender to God and my willingness to give all myself to God had to be complete, or I'm not gonna stay sober, and I'm gonna keep hurting people. I just know that. And 2 weeks later, you know, I was going to this retreat, and a friend of mine, this friend texted me, and I told this friend like what was going on, and we started a conversation, and we started this dialogue between us. I remember she said something to me. She said, you know, I really want to know everything about you. I just want to know, like, really what makes you vulnerable, where you're scared. She asked me things that, like, I was like, what? Like, why would anybody say that? Why would I be vulnerable? What? And I'm going to tell you, I don't know why, but I started sending emails and saying, okay, here's some truth. And I really thought that would end and she would walk away, but that's not the truth. Like, she just didn't, you know, it's like, I have this belief system. If you really know deep down who I am, you won't want to be around me. You won't want to be close to me. And that's so far from the truth. And my experience has said that, but I still have that belief system. But I'm at this level of trusting where I'll give you everything. And I'm going to give you one thing that nobody knows. Well, there's a few people on here, maybe because if they're at the weekend with us. One of the things I told her, if you asked 100 of my friends, how does Bryan feel about being short? I can probably guarantee you that probably 99 of them would say he's totally accepted it. It's not a big deal for him. I remember telling this friend, I said, you know, I've never been okay being short. I've never truly asked God to help me accept. Yeah, it's not like not like I could do anything to get tall. Like, I've never really invited God into that arena to say, please, God, help me not be insecure. I mean, and I'm such a fraud around that my Instagram name, which is weird that I'm 58 and I have Instagram, is Shorty P. I mean, and I told her that. I said, you know, and you know what happened? My son, who's taller than me, has a way of, like, he loves walking up to me when around his friends and standing next to me and showing how taller he is. And it's a running joke in our house. Not that I live there anymore, but it was a running joke. And I remember talking to Chloe, and I said, you know, I'm not comfortable with that. Like, it's fake. You know, it hurts. Every time he does it, it hurts. And how do I tell a 14-year-old kid who's super proud to be taller than his dad that when he does that, it hurts? What's he going to think of me? And I sat him down in this room right across from me. And I said, I got to tell you something. And he's super proud to be tall. And I said, this has nothing to do with you. You never knew this, but I'm really not okay about being short. I've never been okay about being short. And I'm so glad that you don't have to be 5'1". I'm so glad that you're going to be 5'8", 5'9". But when you do that around my friends, it really hurts me. And he just got tears in his eyes. And I told him, I said, it's nothing you've done. And he knew it. He knew it. He said, I just never knew because I don't tell people. And I was so scared to do that because I thought I would look weak in my 14-year-old son's face. And he just gave me a hug. So anyway, I'm really good at emotional sobriety. I'm going to read this. And then I'm just going to shut up. I may even turn my video off. Don't judge me. But this is a book, a friend of mine, she gave me this book. It's not AA literature. Since it's not an AA meeting, I'm going to read it. But this is and here's how much of a fraud I am. I was just going to memorize this story and then say it like I knew this story. And I thought, dude, what is wrong with you? So here's a story. And this is where I'm asking God to bring me today. And I can tell you the book because it's not an AA meeting. It's Thomas Keaton, The Human Condition, if you want to know it. Like, there it is. Go get it. It's a real 2 paragraphs, and then I'll end. It says, a young man with AIDS was dying in a hospital, and he was literally shaking from the fear of death. What had been communicated to him as a child was an emotionally charged idea of God as an implacable judge ready to bring down the verdict of guilty, or a harsh policeman ever on the watch. someone who would want to avoid encountering. The young man was afraid of dying and going to meet this hazardous god whom he had heard about in early childhood. One of the nurses came into his room and he asked her, "Can you do something to help me?" She said, "I can give you a treatment called therapeutic touch." He replied, "Please do." The nurse began the gentle treatment. At one point, his eyes rolled back and the nurse thought he was going to die, but she kept on with the treatment. When she finished, he opened his eyes and said, "You'll never know what you just did for me. I have experienced unconditional love." About an hour later, he died. If we have not experienced ourselves as unconditional love, we have more work to do, because that is who we really are. Thank you, Sam, for asking me to just blather on for about 20 minutes. I'm super grateful, and I'm done.
I love it, man. Thank you so much, Bryan, for sharing with us. And it's really, I think it's really amazing how the ego tries to keep us from this level of honesty, keeps us so afraid from being honest. I mean, you know, it's every time I do the steps to get to a deeper place with it, and there's those times where I can't get, I'm too afraid to be honest in that one area. And as soon as I do it, as soon as I let the light in, you know, it's just amazing how that's when I really get to experience God at a depth I normally don't get to. So we've got a lot of great sobriety in this meeting. Bryan, is there somebody that you want to kick it off? I've been doing like a tag meeting. You want to kick it off and call on somebody? Or are you done?
You can do that.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
What about it, Kurt? What about it, Kurt? You're the first guy on my screen.
Bryan, thank you very much for your honesty, your sincerity, your vulnerability. Kurt alcoholic. Well, I think that that thing you just read about Keating in that story, and I think Mary vouched for this. That experience that guy had when that lady did that physical touch is the experience that released me from that present condition 10 years ago. That touch, and it wasn't a physical touch, but the reason I always come back to this and I always talk about it because it was the difference between, I think it's the part where it says it separates the men from the boys, you know, in the 6 and 7 stuff. Like another friend of mine calls it selfing. I had a false identity about who I was, and there wasn't any amount of effort or work I could do to expose the lie of that. I think that was the whole point of grace or experiencing forgiveness or, you know, touching that unsuspected inner resource. And when I say that, it wasn't a belief system. It wasn't something that was a construct of the intellect. It wasn't something, you know, I've said this before, it was a revelatory thing. And I think that's the difference between, it seems like we really got to be in the fire for this to finally be burned away, you know? I mean, it's like you got to go through that ring, you know? I mean, I sent you a little text you know, and that, you know, I hope that wasn't taken the wrong way. I hope I didn't think it was, but I basically, you know, I think I said it in another meeting. There was a medicine man that said there are many kinds of death besides physical death. When you can allow a part of yourself to die that doesn't serve you any longer, you can be reborn into a new and better way of living. Now, knowing that and experiencing that are two completely different things. And there are many levels of that, I think. It's not just, it happens and I'm done. It's a constant going deeper into the deeper end of the pool with this thing. And we were kind of talking about this emotional sobriety. I think that's the whole point. Emotional sobriety, Bill wrote the letter at 21, 22 years sober or something like that, suffered immense depression, went to therapist, tried LSD, tried sugar. He did all these different things to try and escape this place. And then had that epiphany, that revelatory moment. And so I don't know, I'm kind of rambling. I'm just kind of thinking, you know, I've been around here a while and I've really never got to spend time with you or to talk to you or really get to know you. And I really look forward to that. So thanks a lot, Sam. I appreciate it. Thanks again, Bryan.
Thank you, Kurt. Hey, somebody I wanted to hear from last week. We always run out of time. Was Don L from Richmond. What's up, Don?
Hi, Sam. How are you doing?
Good. Good to see you.
Bryan, I'm humbled by your honesty and your experience. I appreciate it. And it really moves me to understand that sometimes the pain of staying sober is so intense when life is real and much realer sometimes than I want it to be. And my heart's with you, I think. I've been in this meeting now for I think this is the third time I've come, and I listened to a couple of the talks that are recorded. Thank you so much, Sam. And it's been almost, you know, a revolutionary idea for me in being honest about the fact that I cannot be the perfect AA and get this thing, that it's not going to work. And I like the way you talked about that. You know, I'm very, very hard on myself to get these things right and to remember all the stuff and to make sure that that I don't really hurt anybody's feelings. And, you know, I've been such a tornado, even in sobriety, running through the lives of the people that I care about. And it really hurts me now when I hurt other people. And that is something that y'all gave me that I sometimes don't really like. And because I just, you know, want to get what I want, and I want to continue with my unhealthy dependencies and my demands, and I just want to get whatever I want. And I'm finding out that it just does not fit the bill. And listening to the experience of people who I feel are walking on the same path with me, who have had enough sobriety to really have life show up and, you know, smack you in the face occasionally. And to see them and hear them continue to use humility and honesty as the tools for sobriety. And it takes a lot to, you know, drop that facade of I'm okay, you're okay, we're all okay, and isn't this great and wonderful? And sometimes it's just so painful to be sober without something to take the edge off. And I, through this experience with COVID, am really learning. I learned a very powerful lesson about, I think I heard Kurt share, and on a recording, I wasn't in the actual meeting, and the thing that I took away from that, and is my unreasonable demands even upon AA to be the thing that I've always expected it to be. And, you know, not being able to get to face-to-face meetings has been a real drag for me. And because I'm such a, I'm just a people person. I love people. As much as, you know, I want to create a perfect facade to show you, but I really do love people. And not being able to, I'm very extroverted, and being caught in a space of, you know, this thing that I think is an unhealthy matrix between us. It appears that it works quite well though, but has been a challenge for me. And a lot of the stuff I sit here and I will tell you that my heart longed when I heard people talking about Colorado, because Colorado is something that has fed me. Our conference and not being able to go there has really been something. But through that and hearing some of these talks about emotional sobriety and unhealthy dependencies, even upon AA, has really, you know, rang true for me over the past couple of weeks. And I've had to take some looks at, you know, what am I really relying on? And the answer is, most of the time, people. And according to this letter, that's not going to take me where I'm really trying to go. You know, I'm supposed to be relying on a higher power. Y'all are supposed to be lighting the way for me, not the way, just lighting the way. And for me, it has been a kind of had the, you know, some people say, you know, my covers have been pulled off through having to really admit that, because I want to talk about having this great and wonderful relationship with a higher power. And I do. And every time I go through a growth spurt, I always dismiss the previous growth as not mattering until I process through, and then I realize it all mattered, every bit of it. But right now, I'm like, what? I really ask myself, you know, money, property, prestige, AA, popularity, all those things through COVID have been, you know, kind of undermined a little bit. And I've been like, well, this will tell you the truth about who you really are and what you're really relying on. And it's been enlightening. I never like things that are enlightening. They're always uncomfortable, but I'm glad to have gotten some awareness around that. And it'll see, you know, it's such a process when you're kind of, you know, trying to do recovery at depth, because it takes so long to internalize things for me. And then, you know, maybe a year or two later, I'll look back and go, wow, I can actually claim spiritual progress in that area. And then as soon as I claim spiritual progress, more is revealed. Like, here's another dose, take some more medicine. And I really, really, my heart is with you, Bryan. And again, thank you, Sam.
But I think that's what makes it so important to share when you are somebody who works steps and you are extremely active in AA, and you do give so much of yourself, and then you have one of these deeper levels of honesty experiences that take you to this place of pain and then to the place of enlightenment. Because, you know, I don't know anybody, even guys 35 years sober, that go, you know what, on my 32nd year, I got this, and this. I went through this big boom experience and shit. I hadn't had any kind of suffering or problems with any dependencies or any of that stuff come up. Really, I hadn't had a bad feeling or any gas or anything for a long time. You know, now it's been about 15 years since I found that out. I mean, it's just, that's a bullshit notion. And I don't think it's what life's about. Dawn, do you have somebody that you'd like to call on, or you got to unmute yourself?
Let me see the group. Let me click through. I would like to hear from, let's see, Amy S. of Portland.
Wow, thank you, Dawn. I'm Amy. I'm an alcoholic. I was invited to this meeting this afternoon.
Welcome.
Moment. And man, am I glad that I'm here. Emotional sobriety, you know, I've been in the program for quite a long time, and I've had wonderful periods of recovery, and I've had relapses, and every time I've started over, you know, I've gone back with, you know, newcomer eyes, and, you know, that dependence, the dependence upon a higher power, what you guys have been talking about is so genuine. Like, that's really, I mean, I've been going through a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear about the future and my ability to support my family and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like working this program like I never have before. And it has truly saved my life over and over again. And I'm beyond grateful to have this. And Bryan, you nailed it. Like, do I truly in my heart and soul trust that God is going to take care of me? That's where all this bullshit fear comes from. Like, every morning I get this twinge of fear and I have to pray myself out of it. And it's like, if I gotta be willing to absolutely let go, like at the very bottom level. And I've had emotional sobriety before, and it is so, like, the best years of my life were in recovery. And, you know, you can look at this, you know, a relapse as like a screw up, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? My path, it's had a lot of ups and downs, and it's part of my path. And I've learned something every time. And like, I'm kind of on the other side of that. Like, I'm grateful for the pain. I'm grateful for the experience, because I truly do know I know in my heart that growth has to come from pain. Enlightenment has to come from pain. I mean, look at Buddha for years and years and years, searching and searching. And I mean, you know, you're talking about Bill and, like, you know, his years of depression and his searching. It's funny. They all have something in common, like even Jesus Christ and all, you know, all these amazing historical searchers. And shit, they all end up sitting under a Bodhi tree, like realizing that, like, by letting go of everything and allowing that last part of yourself to die and be reborn, that's the only way to get around it. And you guys have just smacked me in the face with that. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome.
Hey, thank you so much for sharing. What about Jim? What about my boy Jim from Seattle? Saw him on here. Jim, you still on here, boy?
Yeah.
Hey, man.
Jim, alcoholic.
Really?
And thank you, Sam, for putting this meeting together. And Bryan, that was just so authentic and real. And, you know, I had a similar experience, you know, about 4 months ago. I think Sam had asked me to lead the meeting, and I just, for myself, it really smacked me in the face with, you know, as somebody was just saying, you know, in early sobriety, you know, with that full surrender submission where I had given up my will 1,000%, and God saw fit, you know, energetically, spiritually, to guide me in a way of life that I didn't have to work for anything, because I'd submitted my will. And this amazing life started to unfold, you know, and I could look the world in the eye, and I wasn't troubled, because everything was a gift, and I could see it as a gift, and I didn't have to manipulate things, and my life, you know, just started taking off. And here I was when I led this group about 4 months ago, you know, almost 18 years sober at that time. And all of a sudden, was it truly trusting God, or was Jim having all these dependencies because my ego and my will, because I had taken on, you know, the control of my life, was a mess? And was I, you know, fully, you know, just simply, you know, I was, you know, plagued because I was conditionally loving, you know, everything was conditional for me. And, you know, and for me, that means that demand and that dependency for my well-being. And so I liked how somebody had just mentioned a moment ago, you know, and it really rang true for me. I think it was Kurt. You know, I can't live on enlightenment that I read out of a book, you know, and I'm a big Emmett Fox guy. And there's times in my sobriety where I can't hear it. I can hear it in my mind. You know, I can hear it and hope to integrate it, you know, into my life. But until, you know, I am opened up as a result, which is love, the presence of God and loving people unconditionally, I can't hear shit. It's not going to hold. I'm still stuck with Jim, my ego, you know, my control, and, you know, that type of sobriety wears thin. And that's why this letter is so pertinent, you know, at least for myself, looking at health, 17 years sober on the outside, you know, ABC, you know, contentment, you should, you know, should is a great word, be happy and content with all these things. But, you know, I was, you know, it's kind of like, you know, the man that, you know, works his life. Once I get there, then I'm going to be happy. Well, I've always been one of those guys. Once I get there, then I'm fearful of losing it because I'm in control again. And simply, you know, going back to the first step in early sobriety, you know, helping other guys unconditionally, whether they stayed sober or not, as Bill talks about, and unconditionally loving people. I was filled with this immense amount of love that wasn't related to having a pot to piss in, a window to throw it out of. And I had everything I ever wanted, and everything showed up spiritually. And it could not have been planned. I mean, that's the crazy, ironic thing when I look back at my life. You know, miracle after miracle after miracle. Even when I got in the way, how everything worked out. And how all of a sudden I can have years of sobriety and be fearful that somehow it's going to be different this time. And so that's what I love about this meeting. And I can't say it enough that, you know, to love unconditionally and where that is the difference from my, you know, happiness, my joy, my not having any fear in my life. And that's really the presence of God. And so, anyway, thanks for a great meeting. And thanks, Sam, for doing that. I hope that.
Oh, it's great, Jim. Thank you, man. It was so funny. Clint H., a guy I really used to love, passed away, but he used to always expound upon in some of his workshops and his talks that part in Bill's story where he's in Winchester Cathedral, and he said, for a brief moment, I needed and wanted God, and he came. And I love that part. He said, and he came. He kept re-emphasizing that, and how when I get to that place where I really need and want God back in my life, he always shows up. Like everybody who completely surrenders over to, nobody says, oh, I completely surrendered to God in this area, and then everything just turned to shit. You know, just nobody does that. Hey, Jim, do you have anybody you want to call on? You still on there, bro? You got to unmute yourself.
Is Anton on here this evening?
Let's see. Anton, you on here?
If not, was it Kurt there with his wife?
Yeah.
How about Kurt's wife? I forget her name, but I met her at FOTS once.
Okay, there you go.
There you go.
Hi, I'm Linda.
Hey, Linda.
Hi, thank you for choosing me. And Bryan, thank you for your honesty. You really touched me. You touched me so deeply because I just recall all the shame. You know, years ago, I had an eating disorder. It was a horrible, horrible eating disorder. And I remember it was like self-reliance. I was too afraid to tell anybody about it. And, you know, that's how I kind of grew up. And I went and sought help and got into, you know, the 12-step programs. And finally, what happened is I found a therapist. And I remember this had been 10 years into the eating disorder that I had tried everything. And I was managing and controlling without really realizing, you know, that I was managing and controlling. And I had seen her, and I remember what she did is I told her I'd been through 11 other therapists. She's my 12th therapist. And And she said to me, I want you, why did you leave them? And I said, because I'd get angry or they'd do something and hurt me, hurt my feelings. And she said, well, what you need to do is you need to tell me what you're feeling. You need to tell me if I make you angry and that was the first time in my life that I'd ever had permission to really express my feelings. And it was sort of, in a way, a fifth step, right? It was like I was sharing honestly for the first time in my life to anybody, like all the shadow stuff. And within 6 months, I was completely released as though I had never had an eating disorder. And by God's grace, it's been 32 years now, but, and then it's, here it's lifted this part that kept me covered up, and I kind of built the self up, and and then I found myself in Al-Anon and dealing with all the issues, and when I came into Al-Anon, what I learned about dealing with the alcoholic is, in the morning you don't yell and you don't shame them, because it's that shame that keeps them drinking. Because when I start shaming, they keep drinking, and it's like, and I realize we do the same things. It's easy to use alcohol, and the alcoholic is an example, but the more shame that I experience, the more I want to get into my managing and controlling and self-reliance. And I just realized that it's kind of like looking at the wrong self, because I look over my life and all that I've ever done, I did the absolute best that I could. And it took me, many, many decades, to love me, and maybe, it's God's expression of loving God. And it's just such a, beauty in this program, that I could look at someone else and they can share what they feel is their shadows and their flaws and everything, and I can find the compassion for them, and through that I can find the compassion for myself, and through finding the compassion for myself, I have it to give. And it's just this experience of the more I love out, the more love comes in, to me, where before I was like that hungry ghost with this big stomach and like constantly trying to feed myself, but it wasn't working. And so I just I'm just so aware when we beat up that self, it's like this little self that we create, and we do so much with that. And once we get who we really are, and have the God reliance, and whoever just the sharing about, if we ask for God, God shows up. I think that was you, Sam. It's so true. I found that to be so true in this program, that all we have to really do is ask and try to step out of the way. And if we can't, I've just found that when I ask to just, please help me step out of the way, please move me out of the way, I moved. And so anyway, thank you again, Bryan. That was really moving and touching. And thank you for your honesty.
Hey, thank you so much, Linda. Do you have somebody you'd like to hear from, Linda, that you call on?
How about Mary? Mary Thayer?
Hey there, Mary Thayer, alcoholic. Wow, this is such a great meeting. Oh boy. What I like is the authenticity of where we can move to in this program. You've known me a long time too, Bryan. You saw me go through a dark night of the soul, and it was between 28 to 32 years. And I remember my reality and where I was and what I did and everything else. I remember picking up a 30-year chip and saying, I'm not the poster child for AA. I really am not. And I realized during that horrific, painful time in my life that there's something in the book that talks about somebody, see, I'm old now. I don't know what page it's on, so somebody there will tell me, where it says that we have to throw out several lifelong conceptions. And that struck me so deep within the core of me that I had, not consciously, but unconsciously depended, if you will, on my conception of what is real in my life. And my belief structure got shattered. My belief structure on who I was as a person. I remember I called Don C. and because I was just probably going to drink at that time. And I remember, first of all, I called my sponsor and I said, I'm looking for relief. What do I do? And I just followed whatever she said to do. And, you know, that trudge, we walk slowly with purpose. I've learned to do that. What I'm here to say is that today, if that had not happened to me, I would not be where I am today. And where I am today is that I'm closer to a presence that I feel the presence. Now I can't, it's not a presence of my understanding, let me tell you that. It just isn't. But I know that there is something that happens. And my sponsor was a wise woman, and she used to say to me, honey, sometimes you're guilty because you're guilty. Well, I never wanted to hear that. I had a story on why I was guilty. You know, I was more attached to my story than I was to who I was and what I'd done. And until I got so sick and tired of my story, and I realized that my reaction to my story was the problem. And I had to sit still and take a look at who I was as a person. I love you so much, and I love Chloe, and I love your kids. There's something that happens in AA. You know, you get married and divorced and divorced and married, and geez, I'm telling you, we just go through them all the time. And I can remember my second husband and I got divorced, and we were still friends. In fact, I had a interesting thing happened to me a couple of weeks ago. I know it was his birthday, and kiddingly, I got up and he was on my mind and on my mind, and I kept saying, you know, Ed, I'd call you, but you're deafer than I am, and you probably couldn't hear me anyway. And the next day or something, I got a text from his daughter that he had passed away on June 28th. And, but sometimes we get really close with people. We were friends. I do believe you can divorce in this program with dignity. I don't think we have to do it, you know, with a lot of drama. That doesn't mean we don't have a lot of pain. And it doesn't mean that, that we're all hurting with you. But some of us have walked through that. And I'll tell you something, you find out who your friends are when you go through one of these things. You find out who will walk beside you, you know, to escape disaster together. But it does require the principles that you were talking about. It has to have some honesty. And what I heard from you tonight was honesty, open-mindedness, willingness, integrity, authenticity. I've coined this phrase in the last couple of years. Sad is not bad. Sad is not bad. It's part of what we're doing here. I was talking to a sponsee today. I was talking about my nightly review, and I wrote it the other day. Usually I just go through my nightly review with just my principles. Was I honest today? Was I open-minded? Was I willing? Did I have some integrity? Was I curious? That's one of my principles, is to be curious. And then for some reason, my pen went on. Because, you know, if you ask yourself those, because we're really practicing our principles in all our affairs. And so that's how I look at my nightly review. I don't do those questions because then I get into my head. But if I ask myself if I was honest today, if I wasn't honest, that scenario is like a little video will go through my head. And I talk about those things. The other night when I wrote this thing, because I think we're all being kind of jammed into sharpening our spiritual kit of spiritual tools. I wrote it, and after I finished writing down my values and kind of looking where I was and whether I'd done whatever, I wrote down, I'm exhausted. I'm sad. I feel lonely for your presence, God. And I wrote it. I think, to be honest with you, I think it was the most authentic review I've done. I went to sleep. It was like, I don't know where I get in my mind this craziness that I'm going to not have feelings. I think the whole thing isn't about what I believe in. I think it's whether or not I'm going to ask for help. Do I, at 46 years of recovery, ask for help? Yeah, more so than I've ever done. More so than I've ever done. And just in the last couple of weeks, I have not been the poster child for 46 years of recovery. But I'm here to tell you that I have a daily reprieve, and nobody's kicking me out. I'm still going to do the trudge whether you like me or not. And I have people that I love. They're on this group. It's kind of you're my tribe. You're the feeling I get. Bryan, you'll always be one of those. And you got my phone number. And I have yours. And I think I'll use it. Love you. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Do you want to, can you call on somebody?
I sure can. How about Olivia? I think I saw Olivia on here. Is Olivia on?
All right, let's see Olivia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Olivia, and I'm an alcoholic.
Olivia.
This is my first time at this gathering, and I'm so moved. You know, Bryan, as you were talking, I was having flashbacks because at 11 years of sobriety, I hit a wall, and part of that wall was my marriage. And I was at a women's meeting, and I shared that I had been sitting on a fence for about 6 months, and I didn't know which way to go, and I kept waiting for God to tell me, and I wasn't getting any messages. And my grand sponsor was in the meeting, and after I shared, she raised her hand, and she said, there's been, at that time, I think she had 30 years of sobriety. And she shared, I've gone through horrendous times in sobriety, and everything has been stripped away. But every time I've been sucked through the eye of a needle. And the only thing I took with me as I went through the eye of the needle was God. And that was no surprise, that's exactly what I needed to hear. And, you know, my husband, who I had married in the rooms, we separated about a week later, and it was amiable. It doesn't mean that we didn't have a lot of feelings. I had a lot of grief that my dream was not coming to fruition. Anyway, that was about 16 years ago. And the journey that I've been going through over the last 16 years is a lot of what you were talking about. It's stripping away the facade, the mask. You know, I had one for work. I had one with sober friends. And that whole idea of practicing these principles in all my affairs, it's like along the way, I've had some serious challenges, both family and health. And each time I have experienced my God in a deeper way, because I have just said, okay, God, I'm being sucked through the eye of a needle again. And I'm going to trust you. And all I can say is that with each time that I've done that leap, I have felt carried. And, you know, I have doubting days, but all I can say is the depth of my trust today of God is nowhere like it was at that 11 years. And I'm so very grateful, and I'm so grateful to have found this group. So thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. Do you see someone that you would like to hear from? Want to pick on somebody? I don't think. Let's see here. What about Dave G. from Greencastle, Indiana?
Hi, yeah, thanks. Sam, my name's Dave. I'm an alcoholic, and I'm really glad to be here. This is the second time I've tuned in. Got invited last week, and it's been really good. It's really good to hear people. I know of a lot of you, don't know many of you well, but it's really good to hear people who've been sober for a long time and who've been working the program and talking about not feeling great all the time. I got sober in 1985, a month after my 21st birthday, and I'm in this small town in Indiana, and I guess maybe about 2 years ago, a guy died who was kind of the grand old man of Greencastle AA. And I'm kind of like the senior guy around now, and that kind of sucks. Thankfully, my other, I consider my home group Gary's group in Indianapolis, and that's where I like to go, and I love that meeting, partially because it's a meeting where I go and I hear things that make me say, I want to ride this train and see how far it goes, you know, that inspires me to want to keep going. And but you know, I've talked, it's ridiculous how early this set in with me, this sense that, you know, well, you've been sober for, you know, a whole 2 years now, you need to look good or whatever, you know, and this sense that at 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever, like you need to project an air of being stable and of being happy, joyous, and free. And boy, just my AA just gets so dead when that's what I'm doing. When I go to meetings and I'm trying to put on the kind of high priest garb and be the AA member I think that other people expect me to be. And yet I have to say, it feels to me a lot of times like that it really is what's expected of me. Like I go to meetings and a lot of times people don't want to hear me talk about that things aren't going well, right? That necessarily. And so there is a lot of stuff that I don't talk about when I go to regular meetings, you know, and it's really good to be connected with people whom I can really share what's going on with me. I've been going, this whole virus thing and everything has been really interesting. I'm a college professor, and I had been on a sabbatical for basically the whole academic year, which was ending up as the virus got ramped up. So I was kind of more isolated than usual from, not from AA people, but from people at work and sort of other social circles and things like that ahead of time. And I have to say, this whole thing, I've been dealing with a lot of anxiety and some real depression. I feel like, you know, I used to talk about when I was a kid and I was drinking, that it just was like there was just this gray filter around me. Because to be honest, even when I was drinking, there's a lot of things in my life were still really pretty good. It was just, by the time it got to me, it just all felt kind of gray and meaningless and like it wasn't going to last. And that can come back, and sometimes does. And there have been times recently too where I have felt like my faith has been really challenged, you know, for a lot of reasons. I have a strong agnostic and atheistic streak that rears itself up when I'm trying to think. There are times when I try and think, well, you know, you're being just like Sam Shoemaker's keeping close to the door thing, right? When really I'm just stubborn and I just don't want to give up and move along. But this has been really good. I just appreciate you all. I appreciate the opportunity to hear everyone, and thank you, Bryan, for the share at the beginning and everybody since then. And thanks. It's great to be here.
Hey, Dave, do you have anybody that you see up here? I hate to pick on you that you might want to call on or hear from? You don't have to know them.
Yeah, I don't. I'm just going to pick a random name. How about Elliot?
Okay. Elliot?
Hey everybody, my name is Elliot and I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Elliot.
This is my first time at this group, so I was invited, and I'm super glad that I'm here. Bryan, thanks for sharing. I am, I've been sober a little over 8.5 years, and the last 8 weeks I think have been the most challenging. Currently going through a divorce, and so a lot of what everyone has been sharing tonight is really hit home for me, and it's been frustrating in some ways to just think that, you know, I could just, you know, I should just be able to apply the steps to everything, and I should just feel better. You know, I should just be able to write it all in a column, you know, put it down on, you know, pen to paper, talk to somebody about it, and I should feel better, right? At least that's kind of where I've been so far in my, you know, in recovery lately, is that you know, just trying to hang on, you know, just trying to hang on and trying to just to stay in the day and to stay grateful. But I've realized that you know, that I don't pray as much as I should, you know, and maybe I should pray more. I don't know. So I've really enjoyed listening to everybody share, and I'm just gonna end with that and just pass to somebody else, if that's all right.
I think, hey, thank you so much. I think I saw my buddy Derek M on here, snuck up on here. You around, Derek? It's not an AA meeting. Derek Mountain, you on here, boy?
I'm a sneaky fella.
What's up, man? How are you?
I'm okay. How are you? Good to see you. Derek Mountain, alcoholic. Good to see everyone. Thanks for your pitch there, Bryan. You know I love you like a brother, and your vulnerability inspires me to do the same. That's like a lot of people have said, that's one of my greatest weaknesses. You know, my head tells me that if I tell you the truth, you'll know I'm sick, and if you know I'm sick, you'll go away, or I won't be welcome here anymore. And if I'm not welcome here anymore, I'm going to get drunk, and if I get drunk, I'm going to die. And I do that in about 4.5 seconds. So instead, I just say, I'm fine, thank you. How are you? And I keep everybody out here. And it's hard to be honest with others around me about what's really going on when I can't hardly be honest with myself. You know, I work steps in an effort to control my life, and I don't realize I'm doing it until I get to the other side and say, well, I didn't have the effect I expected out of that. And you know, I have this very deep agnostic streak that runs through me, and I've been intimately aware with, you know, of the, you know, the dark night of the soul, and to back myself into that many a time. I was thinking the other day about, you know, that agnostic streak that runs through me, and you know, there was a time when I was drinking that I would make fun of people who really had a deep faith, but I saw it as a weakness. Like they would say, oh, praise Jesus when the light turned green, or with every bite of food, or whatever, you know, and I think that I viewed that as a weakness. And the truth is that I envy that faith. I don't have that deep of faith, you know. I have friends who in AA who every time they talk about their relationship with God, they get choked up and teary-eyed, and I really envy that. But I believe that they're probably working harder on that relationship than I am, you know. And I go about saying, well, God is everything, because that's the right answer. But what do my actions demonstrate? You know, my actions demonstrate otherwise, because I engage in behavior that's objectionable to me. I walk around with this wall of you know, ego built up around me, and I have a, you know, persona that I want the world to see, and there's some truth to it, but it's not entirely genuine, you know. So, you know, the last few weeks I have intended to be on here and haven't had opportunity because of other commitments on Thursday nights, but I've gone back and listened to Kurt's talk and Jeff's talk and the shares that were going on, and I really wanted to be with you all tonight. This idea of emotional sobriety is alive and well in me right now. Going through a set of steps myself, and I've got some amends to make that I'm really not super excited about making. You know, like, I don't have a lot of excuse for the behavior that generated the need for an amends, and that, you know, there's just the fear of doing that kept me from writing the inventory. You know, but the inventory is written. It's been 5th step, and I'm deep into an 8th step, and trying to find the willingness to right these wrongs so that I can be closer to God's kids, and so that I can ultimately be closer to God and come out the other side of this with a new experience. So I'm really glad to be here tonight, and we got time.
Yeah, you got to pick on somebody, Derek.
All right, I'm calling on Kate Reaney.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was praying I wouldn't get asked tonight, and I guess God still doesn't follow directions. Bryan, thank you for your sharing. Thank you for your honesty, your authenticity, and your heart. And I was thinking when you were sharing, you know, I can't wait to see what God does with this, man. And, you know, sometimes for me, it's a little bit like reading a book, and I can be in the middle of the book and I don't like this chapter, you know, and I want to toss the book out, you know, but I haven't read to the end of the story to see how it all comes out. And I feel like that watching and listening to you. And, you know, I appreciate your honesty in the service that you're doing tonight, and really touching and influencing a lot of people by your authenticity. And I love that story that you read out about the healing power of touch. And I remember reading a few years ago, you know, there's actually medical studies that have come out with some cancer patients that showed that the healing power of touch in some patients had more effect than chemotherapy. And I think, you know, what you were talking about and what I heard is about that, you know, that deep connection and the knowing that we're loved, you know, despite our flaws that we see as flaws, or our vulnerabilities. And, you know, I too, you know, I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want to tell you what's really going on. You know, I want to keep you out here, because then, you know, I can protect myself from what I believe will be rejection. And my experience, especially recently, you know, in sharing, has been that when I truly allow someone to see who I am and where I'm afraid and where I feel really vulnerable, the more they love me. So my ideas about that are a little warped, you know, because the thing that I think will drive people away actually brings people closer to me. Because I think what it does for me when people do that is it lets me know that I'm not alone. And that's what I heard in your sharing tonight, Bryan. So yeah, thanks very much. And thanks for the meeting, Sam.
Thank you. you know, they keep bringing up that unconditional love, and I think that's what, you know, Bill's talking about. The whole essence of the essay is that the solution to all of it is an outgoing of love to God's creation and his people, you know, without any dependencies or demand for anything else. And I think that's the healing balm to all of it. I remember Don used to talk about how he would ride around in his truck. He used to think that his job was to rush a guy through the steps right immediately, or take him immediately through the steps. And then he realized his first job was to love him. And some guy, he just made cookies for him and let him ride around in the car. I mean, I don't know the story. I mean, the best I can remember, he would have the guy sit in the truck and he'd bring him cookies, and Jackie and he would, you know, just love on the guy until he was ready to start taking some steps. So anyway, it's a beautiful story. Do you have somebody you'd like to call on?
I don't know. I saw Tom and Juanita here, so let's hear.
Yeah.
Are they still on here? Do you see them, Sam?
Oh yeah, they should be on there.
All right. Well, let's hear from the best part of that deal. Let's hear from Juanita.
Damn, Kate.
Yeah.
I was hoping it was going to be Tom. Time's almost up, so I think the only thing that I really want to say is to Bryan, and it's, Bryan, I love you. I love you. I love Chloe. I love your kids. And one of the greatest blessings that we have, and one of the greatest gifts, first of all, is God. The second thing is each other. And I think there are times that we need God with skin, and we get to be that for each other. And we are all in the best part of the fellowship, which is the fellowship of the Spirit. Mm. And when we get to be real, when we get to be authentic, when we get to strip off those defenses, from my experience, it's the time that we become the absolute most lovable. And I love you dearly. And I love you dearly. And I love your family dearly. And there are people on this meeting who I love with all my heart. And it's because we do this stuff and we're just honest. And God uses our defects, our weaknesses, and just holds us close. And we get to hold each other close. Love you. Thanks.
Really good.
Thank you. Bryan talked about this one part. He says, how shall our unconscious, from which so many of our fears, compulsions, and phony aspirations still stream, be brought into line with what we actually believe, know, and want? How to convince our dumb and raging and hidden Mr. Hyde becomes our main task. And I think this is how we convince our dumb, raging, hidden Mr. Hyde, you know. I'm going to, Bryan, do you have anything? I always like to open it up for someone. Do you have anything you'd like to add, or anything that you'd like to
No.
Anything you hadn't said?
No,
Okay.
I'm good. Thanks for inviting me.
Hey, thank you, man. Great job. Juanita, I think we all can just quietly say this prayer internally to ourselves and just turn the mute on, but you want to probably like to hear you say it. Will you take us out with the Lord's Prayer?
Sure. Have a moment of silence. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you so much, guys. I'm going to post the recording tonight on the Fox Facebook page, or probably tomorrow when it gets done. And then also wanted to let you know, next week, Edith P. is going to be moderating our workshop. So we'd love you all to join, and thank you for participating.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Brian.